those. Classical sampling, well, I think we'll do one out of that and then have you guys do the rest of it. It's not too hard. And then probably start in on the chapter 3 ethics one. And this is a kind of a big one. This is it's just a lot of technical, a lot of this, but not that, and the weird stuff. I mean, it's hard, but it's just, you gotta know where you're at. Okay, so today, let's open up chapter 1 and 2 handout, and I think we're near the end of it. Okay, types of audit reports. And just to kind of remind everybody, because it does make a difference here a little bit. Non-issuers are privately held companies. And the SEC has no jurisdiction. Oops. Issuers are publicly held and the SEC has jurisdiction. Hold on a second. Jurisdiction. So, and as we go through here, and this is it can be a big deal as far as the questions are concerned, and not just for this chapter, but the next chapter is coming up. So this is chapter 3. It's knowing whether it's for issuers or non-issuers. They really hit it hard on the CPA exam, and the differences can be quite distinct. So anyway, but for today's class, we'll go ahead and go through. But so non-issuers, privately held, SEC jurisdiction. Publicly held, they have SEC jurisdiction. So, okay. The first one is the clean audit report. Okay, clean audit report. So this is this is called the unmodified report. And that's for non-issuers. It's called the unqualified report for issuers. Otherwise known as report, standard report. Oops, that's qualified. So unmodified report is for non-issuers. Unqualified report is for issuers. Okay, so it's a clean one, a standard report, same thing. Okay, and this is when the financial statements are Free of material misstatements. Okay, now remember that we say free of material misstatements. That doesn't mean it's free of all misstatements. There could be many misstatements in there, but if they're not material, they still get a clean audit report. They still get a unmodified report or a unqualified report. So, things that are immaterial are not going to change the report. Okay. Well, let's go to the next one. Group is called these are going to be called modified. I'm going to put it right in the title, actually. Type today. Okay, modified qualified report and qualified report. And you'll notice that this whole thing about modified is going to keep coming up and up with the non-issuers. Okay. Also known as an except for opinion. I'll talk about why in a second here. And it is when there is a material misstatement exists. It is not pervasive. Okay. Okay, so qualified opinion. It's, and by the way, a modified qualified or is a plain qualified opinion. You might be wondering about that term qualified, because the clean one is called an unqualified. A qualifier means that, you put something on the opinion that, why aren't I focusing here? My camera's not focusing. I hate to be so blurry, but Well, I'll work on it later. Well, it is kind of a. I put in a I put in a new faster chip. I wonder if that has something to do with it. Okay. Well, hopefully it's better focused now. It's so strange though. I mean, you would think they're putting in a different computer. I put in a faster one because it's a long story. This is an old gaming computer that from it's very reliable computers. Okay. Oh, I don't know. Oh, okay. A qualified. So a qualifier is something like saying, if you were to look at a car and say, okay, oh, the car's in great shape, except for the tires. That would be qualifying, so you're saying it's in great shape, but then there's a qualifier added on, except for the tires. It's the same thing with audit reports, is that what the qualified opinion is it says, okay, financial statements, are fine, except for, and that's what they call it, an except for opinion, because it says except for, and then whatever the bad thing is, they put it in there. So it's qualifying the opinion. If you're wondering about an unqualified opinion, you say, okay, that's a nice car. No qualifiers about the tires or anything else. So an unqualified opinion means that there's nothing bad. A qualified opinion means, okay, everything's okay except for, and then you put this qualification on it that reduces the impact of it. So it's for a material misstatement, but it's not pervasive. It's not throughout the financial statements. And that generally the financial statements are fairly presented. So a qualified opinion is when there's a material misstatement, you've identified it, that it is not pervasive. It's not throughout all the financial statements. It's only for, say, one account. And the overall the financial statements are okay. So even though this one account's bad, maybe whatever it is, let's say the inventory account, for whatever reason, you can't get a determination of a value on some inventory or something. You tell the reader, look, we, except for this inventory, everything else okay. So, the sales, fairly presented. The cost of goods sold, fairly presented. The selling expenses, fairly presented. All that kind of stuff. So it gives the reader some assurance saying, like, look, there is a problem, but they're fairly presented, and the rest of the stuff you can rely upon. So that's the modified opinion. You almost always hear them called except for opinions. So modified report or qualified except for report. Now, by the way, you'll see opinion and report often used interchangeably. Clean opinion, clean report. And the reason for that is that the opinion is really the only thing that generally changes. The reports are all standardized, but the opinion is the only thing. So that's why you'll see sometimes a report referred to as an opinion rather than the entire report. It actually is the entire report. But. Okay, the worst one. Oops, did something wrong here. Okay. I made a reverse report for non-issuers. Okay, this is the worst report And material misstatements. Be multiple ones. They are pervasive. Thorough accounts impacted. Financial statements are not generally accepted accounting principles. And the financial statements cannot be relied upon. A thought there. Okay, so adverse opinion, material misstatement, maybe several of them. Pervasive, several accounts are impacted. The financial statements are not GAAP, and the financial statements cannot be relied upon. I'll tack one more on here. It's kind of the same idea, but oops. Financial statements are not fairly presented. So adverse opinions. Okay, so qualified opinion, material misstatement, but everything else is fairly presented. Adverse opinion, material misstatement, maybe several of them. The financial statements are not following the rules. They should not be relied upon. That they're not GAAP. And now both of these, the qualified and the adverse opinion, the auditor knows the dollar amount of the misstatement, and that is put in the audit. So if they're saying that the make up a number, the inventory is misstated by $2 million, it'll go right in the audit report. Now, hopefully, so let's say there's a $2 million error, and you tell management about it, and management doesn't correct it. Okay. Hopefully they will, because you'd say, look, if you don't correct it, it's going in the audit report anyways. It's not like you're going to hide this from anyone. This audit report goes along with the financial statements. And in this audit report, it's going to say your inventory is off by 2 million. Now, notice you're not going to be fooling anybody, and anyone reading this is going to know that you're trying to put one over here. It's like almost like you're trying to make a fraud out of it. So, it's in your best interest to correct the financial statements. That's the whole idea behind this. Is we'll talk a little bit more about later. But obviously, if you're going to put it in the audit report anyways, it makes sense that they would want to go ahead and correct the financial statements, even if they didn't agree with you. Maybe they said, no, that inventory is not not worthless. You say, well, it is. And going back and forth, they'll probably end up putting it in there, changing it anyways, just because it doesn't do them any good to have a qualified or adverse opinion. Okay, so let me put that right in on both of these. So for both the modified qualified report and the modified adverse report, you will put the known misstatement right in the audit report. And so it is not, it's not something that anyone reading the audit report is not going to know. So when you come up with something bad, even if management refuses to change it in the financial statements, it's going to go in the audit report. And by the way, these adverse opinions and qualified opinions, these are fairly rare for obvious reasons. It doesn't do any good to have those out there. Okay, now the last one here is, let's see. It's kind of an opinion. This is sometimes known as, you'll hear it often called a disclaimer. Okay. And this is when okay, so there's not enough evidence available for the auditor to form an opinion. And this could come about for a few different reasons. It could be that the evidence just isn't there. You know, for instance, if they had a fire in a business and it wiped out all the computers that they had. You know, okay, well, you have backups, and well, the backups were in the fire also. Okay, well, so there's no backups, there's no computers, there's nothing. You can't verify through their accounting system the numbers. It's just not there, right? Excuse me. So if that's the case, if there's not enough information for you to form an opinion, you give a disclaimer of opinion, which is really like giving somebody nothing. Here's nothing and here's our bill, because you can't get enough. It could also be that the client themselves is preventing you from getting the information. So you say, okay, I want to talk, we need to talk to your attorney. One of the requirements is that you need to talk to the business's attorney. And they say, well, forget it, you're not talking to my attorney. I say, well, I need to, we have to for the audit. You're not talking to my attorney, period. Okay, now, first of all, in that case, if someone tells you that you can't talk to their attorney, well, who do you really want to talk to now? You want to talk to the attorney because, right? I mean, if they say they don't want you talking to the attorney, you say, well, there must be some reason why. Before you were kind of interested in finishing the audit and you needed to talk to the attorney. Now you're really curious about what the attorney's going to tell you. So if the client could also be preventing you from getting the information you need. And if that's the case, they get a disclaimer of opinion, which again is like getting a big hot steamy bowl of nothing, because this a disclaimer of an opinion is no opinion. Okay, so this is And misstatements, if any, are unknown. So unlike the qualified or the adverse opinion, you cannot say these are misstated by X dollar. You know, the inventory is off by $2 million. You don't know what it is, what it's off by. It might be absolutely correct, it might not be, but you don't have enough information to form an opinion on it. So disclaimers generally don't have dollar amounts. If they do have dollar amounts in it, it'll basically say we can't confirm X amount of dollars. It doesn't mean that that X amount of dollars is a misstatement. It just says that we can't confirm it. So generally they don't put the dollar amounts in there. And if they do, they're just saying, we don't know. You know, we can't confirm, you know, the sales of $12 million or whatever, you know, whatever it is. They're not saying that it's misstated by that amount. They're just saying that they have no idea, you know, or maybe not enough of an idea to make an opinion. Form out, have an informed opinion. Okay. So disclaimer is no opinion. And it's pretty much worthless, you know, as far as the opinions are concerned. Okay. So let's go through these and see which ones are, which one we would choose. Number 8, auditors were unable to verify a significant investment made by their client. Which audit report would be appropriate for this scenario? Anyone? I don't know if you guys are talking and I can't.
Qualified report,
Um,
because it's a material misstate.
the word here significant is kind of, it could be confusing. And now, and the thing is, it's plural here. So it could be a, you're right, it could be a qualified report. There's also one more that it could be.
Also or adverse report.
Probably.
I'm not even looking at the answer. Well, okay, sorry. I was looking up at trying to read through the types of audit reports, so I wasn't even staring at the options. I'll shut up now.
No, go ahead. But okay, so they have a significant amount of investments. They can't, they're unable to verify. So they could, now notice something here. And that is, they're not saying they're misstated. They're saying they don't know.
So I'd go with disclaimer then.
It could, no, but you're absolutely right with the modified qualified. It is possible they do get that. The most, whenever you see unable to verify, the logical one that comes to mind is a disclaimer of opinion. However, if you notice, this is in one account, and a disclaimer gives the client nothing. Right? It's like saying, hey, here's nothing. Whereas if you have a qualified report, you can say, look, we couldn't verify the investments, but everything else here is fine. You know, so, well, normally you could do it, you know, as a disclaimer whenever you don't know something. It is also possible that you give them a qualified report telling, you know, look, okay, these investments we're not sure of, but the rest of it is fine. So a qualified opinion is not necessarily the worst thing. It's better than a disclaimer usually. Okay. I determined that cash, inventory, and revenues were materially misstated. Which type of report do you think you get for that?
Would that be modified?
If you modified, would it be qualified or adverse?
Qualified.
Actually, probably be adverse because you have more than one account that are materially misstated. Usually modified are for one, so it'd definitely be a modified. And you know what, I gotta correct something here that I did. The disclaimer is also known as a modified for the non-issuers. It is a modified type of opinion. It's actually not an opinion, but it's a modified, yeah. So this will be a modified report, and it'll be a adverse report. Okay, auditors determined that cash, inventory, and revenues were all immaterially misstated. Which audit report would be appropriate for the scenario?
Unmodified, unqualified.
Yep. Clean report. If it's not material, clean. And again, we don't say that these are necessarily 100% accurate. We just say that they're not materially misstated. So. And number 11 is very similar to number 8. Again, come with this unable to verify, which, you know, when you see unable to verify, the thing that pops into your head is it's a disclaimer. You can't get enough information. However, if it's contained in one account or area, that you can give them a different type of report we just talked about. So number 11, which two would be available for the auditor? So there's offsite inventory, and for whatever reason they can't get to it. What kind of report do they get? Oh, you guys are toying with me. Yeah, it's similar to this one. Yeah, it's similar to this one in that you could give a modified, qualified opinion or a disclaimer.
What would be the first option?
The most usual option, if you can't verify something, is going to be a disclaimer. But a modified report is available. And here's the weird thing about it, and this has kind of come up recently. It used to be that if it was modified because management wasn't cooperating, right? So you say, okay, I want to verify this inventory, and management says, well, we're not going to let you verify that inventory. Whatever it is. Oh, that's our research and development. We don't let anyone see our research and development, costs. Whatever it is. If the management refuses, it was always the rule was you had to give them a disclaimer because it was caused by the client themselves. And so you wouldn't give them any help, basically. They've kind of changed that a little bit, and they've actually said that you can, even if it's management, you can give them a qualified report, and you're going to put in the report basically the amount that you can verify. So in the past, it was all, it really depended on whether management was the cause, or if it was just some circumstance that happened to management. So you can't verify the inventory. Why? Because it's in, this country, and they're having a civil war now, and you can't safely go there. And, there's other reasons why you can't verify things that are beyond the client's control. So, yeah, so it really depends on, and again, those are both judgment calls by the auditor. The auditor could, you're perfectly fine going with a disclaimer, or you're perfectly fine going with a qualified report, even if it's management themselves that is not cooperating and causing you not to get the information, which is new, like in the last couple of years. Okay, why are qualified and adverse opinions rare? So qualified and adverse opinions are actually fairly rare. Why?
I will say B.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the report anyways. And a lot of times when people start, saying, we're not gonna change them, what do you think of that? You say, well, okay, it's going to the report anyways, everybody's gonna know about it. Then they usually come around. And I'll say something else too about issuers. For issuers, qualified and adverse opinions are extraordinarily rare. And it's because the minute they get a qualified or adverse opinion, the SEC is going to step in, stop trading on their stocks, tell them, that all kinds of bad things are going to happen to them if they're publicly traded and they get any kind of a qualified or adverse opinion. And a disclaimer would be completely out of the question. So they're extraordinarily rare. They're rare anyways, because the dollar amounts are going to be included in the audit report, but they're also extremely rare as far as publicly traded companies. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a publicly traded company that had a qualified or adverse opinion. Maybe if they were going bankrupt, they may have, but I've never. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen. That'll be interesting. Maybe I'll look that up, see if you can find anything out about it. But anyway, so the opinions of the adverse and qualified opinions are very rare because it doesn't do the management any good to have those out there, to not have change their financial statements. And disclaimers are basically nothing. Here's our bill. Here's nothing. You take a disclaimer anywhere. How about this scenario though? How about this? You're going to give somebody an adverse opinion. So you say, okay, make these changes. No, don't, look, don't, I'll tell you what, give me a disclaimer instead. Don't give me an adverse opinion. Give me a disclaimer. Can you give a disclaimer instead of an adverse opinion? So
I would vote no.
it is no. And it's no for a good reason, and that a disclaimer says you don't know, where an adverse opinion you do know. So if you do know that these financial statements are misstated, you cannot. It'd be similar to an auditor committing fraud. You're saying you don't know when you really do know that the financial statements are misstated. So you cannot bargain away. They say, well, just say you don't know, but you do know. And issuing a disclaimer would be inappropriate at best and fraudulent at most, because you're saying you don't know if the financial statements are misstated when you actually do know that they are misstated. So you cannot bargain away an adverse opinion with a disclaimer. Okay. All right. Well, the next thing up is, I think I have to send it out to you. Hold on. Actually, it might be in the course documents. I think I put it in the course documents. Let me check. Yeah, multiple choice questions. Okay, let me send these out. Send email. These are the same ones that are in Blackboard. So if you want to get them faster, faster. Okay. pull them up on my computer. Okay, I'm gonna. Okay, a lot of these are actual CPA questions, and I think I'm gonna do it with a poll. Let me. What did I do here? I lost my poll.
It did go out. I see it for questions 1 and 2. Oh, you can scroll, so it's got 1 through 10.
Okay. Hey, my dog's over at your house. What the hell is that?
Yeah,
Excuse me,
sorry.
Professor.
Yeah,
Do we have to turn this in?
yeah. Well, here's what kind of happened. I'll submit it, and we'll I'll give you guys extra credit points. You know, you guys that are here will get extra credit points. And what I'm going to do is, it'll have your names on the poll itself, and the extra credit points are as follows. And some of these will end up on the exam.
Another quick question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So far the only assignment that we had was the quiz at the beginning of the class, right? At the beginning of the semester,
Absolutely. Yep.
right? Thank you.
Yeah, this will be the first handout that gets turned. Let me finish this up and then but if we get, if you guys get at least 5 of these right, you'll get +2 added on the test. If you get 7 of them correct, get +3. If you get 9 of them correct, +4. Now, there's actually 12 questions on here. The poll is only for 10. So we'll go up to 10. And then we'll talk about the last 2 individually. And yeah, and so, you know, possibly included in there to get up to the 9 points in there. The last 2, the 2 extra bonus ones. Yeah, so let me take a look though, make sure I have the assignments due. Yeah, the classical sampling handout, we may not get to that today. Or maybe we'll get to the classical sampling one. I gotta make a decision here. Because I think maybe we'll start in the, actually I think we'll postpone the classical sampling. We'll finish it up next class. And I think we'll just start in chapter 3 after we come, we'll take a break. But anyway, so what I want you to do is to go through these. These are multiple choice questions. These are something similar to you see on the CPA exam. And these are, some of them are really tough, some of them aren't so tough, but they're very specific. And do your best on them. And by the way, the CPA exam is basically, they don't come out and say this, but it's basically about 75%. If you get about 75% on it, that you will pass the CPA exam. What that tells you is you can miss 1 out of 4 and be fine. Yeah. So these are tough. It's, the wording is tough. The you know, the ideas behind them are tough. So but go through and do your best on them. And I think we'll do is we'll take a we'll take a break and come back at maybe. So do the first 10. And we'll do 11 and 12 together. Yeah. Okay. So complete 1 through 10 and put your answers in the poll. And when you're done with that, go ahead and you can go ahead and take a break. But and don't be afraid to make a mistake. You know, it's not gonna. And when I release the results of the poll, it does not have your name next to the answer. So don't be afraid that, oh no, I was gonna know that I picked A when I should have been C, whatever. It's not like that. But when the answers are put out, doing it, the poll is displayed for everybody. It does not have your name next to your answer or anything like that. So anyway, we've got complete 1 through 10. Do your best with it, and we'll come back and we'll go through them and decide which ones are, you know, which are the best answers. Oh, another thing about this too, about the CPA exam, and that is they always ask for the true instructions are what is the best answer, not necessarily what's the only answer. I know, and then again, that judgment comes into play. So what is the best answer? All right, so let's say be back at 7:10.
I have a quick question about what you just said.
Yeah.
Does that mean that you get, like, let's say partial credit or less points for other correct answers that may not be the best, or is it still just considered wrong?
I was wrong. Let's say which one's the best answer, and it is a vague terminology, but yeah, which is the best answer.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Now they do this though. The tougher the questions are either given 1 point or 2 points. So if it is a tougher question, if you get it right, it counts double. But they don't. They don't give partial on the multiple choice. Let's see. I'm gonna go. Speaking of little dogs, I'm going. Hey, did you guys hear about the weather? They're talking about they were gonna get like huge amounts of snow.
18 inches or something like that.
Yeah.
I hope not. I have to go to the office tomorrow, so.
Well, I saw a thing where it was. I didn't see up to 18. I saw 9 to 16 inches. They said it's going to start snowing an inch an hour after like 10 o'clock or something. But
Oh gosh.
I know. I hope you don't have to go in, because it's that would be bad. Oops, wait a minute. Okay, it looks like everybody has answered the question. Is there anyone who has not answered the question? Well, no snow yet. I just looked outside, there's no snow yet. But anyway, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll then. Share the results. And share screen. Okay, first one, which is not required. And you are not responsible for B. Split that one on, we'll give you that one. Okay, oops. Specifies a reason, you guys got that one right. Operational audit. Good. Typical objective. Generally A, however, it's not uncommon to also link financial statement audits in with that too. But the best answer here is going to be to make recommendations for performance. Although a lot of times this is also a goal of an operational audit is to make improvements in how they make the financial statements together. I used to do that. So far, so good. Eight. Correct answer is B. Now this one, let's answer D. There is one word that kicks that out, and it's that. And weird, as odd as it sounds, in auditing, we don't talk about the financial statements being accurate. We never guarantee the financial statements are accurate. We don't say fairly presented or they're reasonable assurance that they're free of material misstatements. So yeah, that's going to kick that one out. Now, if that had said impaired, fairly presented or something like that, it would be okay. Okay. Good. Well, you guys got all the points. So. All right. Primary responsibility for disclosures, the management. Okay, let's go to the two bonus ones. $11, which of the following services is generally provided by only CPA firms? Anyone?
Financial statement audits.
Yep. Financial statements audits, that's what your license allows you to do, the financial statement audits. These other audits, anyone can do them. I mean, if it's for the IRS, you gotta be qualified, but these other audits, you don't have to have a CPA license to do them. The right to practice CPA is given by which organizations? So who gives out the CPA licenses.
B.
Yeah, yep, B. I'm going to give a +5 on that. We gotta get all of them right. Let's see, so I'll say it's unusual to get all of these right. So I'll add 5 onto your. And I need to close the poll and then I got to save it. Let's see here. What is this, week 3, right?
Yep.
Okay, I'll send out a what happened here? So I will send out a the chapter 1 and 2 exam. I'll try to get out tonight. Certainly by tomorrow, I'll have the chapter 1 and 2 exam out. I may put some of these multiple choice questions on there. But again, you guys have the answers, so you can look them up. But anyway, make sure you turn in, so it'll be sent out by email. And be sure you turn in whatever form I gave you. That's the only thing I have for that. There are going to be a couple, probably like, I don't know, 3 or 4 multiple choice questions, and then probably 2 or 3 essay questions that'll come out of the chapter 1 and 2 handout. So it'll be due a week from Friday. It'll be on the 11th. And yeah, and if you have any questions, we're going to meet before it's due. So if you do have any questions, you can also ask any questions next class. Now, I think we should save this. Save that.
Professor,
Yeah.
do we have to submit the quiz that we just did or not really?
You don't, because I already have your, it'll be included in the poll.
Oh, okay. Thank
All
you.
your names are included in the poll, and you guys will get the extra credit. Okay, and so today, so let's go ahead and get started on the chapter 3 handout. In the chapter 3 handout, we're not going to get, we'll get a little ways into it, but it's a big one. All right, let me share my screen here. And we'll do we'll do some more of the classes in that class. Okay, and my reason for doing that is I'm going to assign the classical sampling for points for like Anna, and so I want to kind of space it out from the chapter 1 and 2 exam. All right, so chapter 3 ethics is a huge part of the CPA exam. It's somewhere between 15 to 20% of the auditing section, which is huge. And they really hit it hard, the ethics part of it. If you think about it, the only thing we give is credibility. So ethics is absolutely huge when it comes to our profession. We can't have people out doing wild, goofy stuff and still have a profession where you are actively putting your name on the financial statement saying that these are free of material misstatement, that things are going a little crazy. So anyway, they get really into ethics all through throughout the entire process. It's all about ethics and that, and they really get serious about it. Now, the part that we're going to start to cover today is what they call covered members, and these are people who have the ability to influence an audit. So, nowadays the term influencer is used quite a bit. Kind of the same idea is that if someone can influence the audit, that they're going to be held to a higher standard than everybody else, right? That if you can influence the audit, you really have to be clean, right? You really have to uphold the standards. Someone who's not involved in the audit, who has nothing to do with it, they aren't held to this highest standard. But those people that can influence the audit, the people who are working on the audit and that sort of thing, they're going to be held to a higher standard than other people. And so that's what they come up with this idea of covered members. And I think that it's one of those weird things that the word covered member just became, about members that are covered by this, these independence rules, and can be referred to as covered members. Okay, so covered members. Now, in the audit office, the office that's doing the audit itself, which people have to be held to this higher standard? And anyone who's working on the audit, so if we have partner 1, there's partner 3, manager 3, any seniors on it, any associates on it, these are all people that can influence the audit. So these people are going to be held to this higher standard. So anyone working on the audit is going to be held to this higher standard of, in this case, independence, but higher standards as far as the audit itself is concerned. Okay. Also, any partner in that audit, in that office, I should say, is also considered a covered member. They're going to be held to that higher standard too. So for instance, if they're auditing, say, IBM, my spacing here is a little off. So let's say if they're auditing IBM, that you cannot have people, say, investing in IBM and doing the audit, because at that point their goal might be compromised. And 2, when it comes to things like independence, there's also another kind of rule to it, and that is it must be independent as far as appearance and in fact. So let's say that you own 10 shares of IBM, not a lot of shares, just 10 shares of IBM. Now, in fact, you might be independent because it's not that much money we're talking about here. But what you don't want to have happen is the appearance of, hey, there's auditors that are owning, investments in this company that they're also auditing. The appearance is that this can't be relied upon. So it has to be in both, independent as far as in appearance and in fact. I should put that here somewhere. So just because you're independent, you have an independent frame of mind, it also has to be that the appearance is that you are independent. So again, the only thing we give financial statements is credibility. So, okay. So so in the audit office itself, these people are going to be held to a higher standard. In the consulting arm of the business, they're called non-attest services. They're not looking at the financial statements per se. So in the consulting area, so you may have one office that does the audit, another office that does some consulting with them. They might be the same office, but if they're not, if they're in a different office, then the first two levels, the partner and the manager that are working on them in a consulting capacity, those two must also be held to these higher standards. So partner and manager. Now, here's where it gets nitpicky some more. But I think, well, can this get more nitpicky? Because we like it there. Oh, yeah. These people are falling into what they call a 10-hour rule. That they have to do at least 10 hours of consulting to be a covered member. If they don't do at least 10 hours of consulting, they're not. These are often called 10-hour people. And that they must do at least 10 hours of work. So for instance, let's say this is for not a test, let's say they're doing some tax work and the client calls up about some tax question. It takes 3 hours for them to, they bill out for 3 hours. Ooh, what did I just do here? So they bill out for 3 hours, right? You know, that person at that point is not a covered member. They bill out for more than 10 hours, then they are. So they're often called 10-hour people. And the idea is that if it's just a trivial amount of work, that this doesn't count as them being, you know. Okay, so far, oh, I got it down here. I should have looked down there first. So these are the people that we have so far that are covered members. Now, there are other people. These are the most common ones, by the way. These are the most common ones that are going to be called, and these are the biggest group of them. You may have 15 people working on this audit. It's a lot of people. You may have a number of partners and all that kind of stuff. But there are other people who are considered to be covered members. Anyone other than those first three groups that can influence the audit. So it could be a senior partner. That is a person who has the ability to influence the audit, even if they're not in that office. Maybe they're, part of their job is to oversee that office and another number of other offices. So a senior partner is also considered a covered member, even though they're not a partner in that office and they're not on the audit itself, but because they have this oversight, that they're considered a covered member. Question on that? Okay, the CPA firm itself is a covered member. So if it's Deloitte is doing the audit, I don't know who does the audit of IBM, to be honest with you. But let's just say it's Deloitte. Deloitte doing the audit of IBM. Deloitte, the CPA firm, is considered a covered member. And so investment rules, like we're going to have investment rules that you can't directly invest in the client. Even their so if they have a pension plan, maybe the pension plan they want to invest in IBM, maybe just because they think it's a good company or whatever, they can't do it. They're a covered member, and as a covered member, they're held to a higher standard. And any entity that is owned or that is controlled by covered members. And this is kind of to clear up a loophole that you say, okay, well, I know we'll have 3 covered members get together and make an investment group. We each take a third interest. No one controls it. No one member controls the group, and we'll invest in IBM stock, and we'll say, hey, I don't control it. Well, if the entity itself, the membership of its entity is controlled by covered members, in other words, they have more than 50%, then it's considered a covered member also. Now, if they invest in something that doesn't have they don't have over 50%, then it's okay. It's not, well, it's not considered a covered member anyways. Okay, so these are the normal ones. The green and the yellow are the normal ones. And then these down here are kind of cleanup ones that anyone who could actually influence the audit, the CPA firm itself, or if there's a different organization that's controlled by covered members, they're also considered covered members. Okay, now comes the fun rules. So now we know who we're holding up to this higher standard. Now we're going to figure out what the rules are for these people. Covered members cannot own any direct interest. Oops. Oops, I need a T there on client. All right, so covered members cannot own any direct interest in client. They cannot own any all right. So if you're a covered member, you cannot own one share. Let's say you're auditing IBM, you cannot own one share of IBM, period. Any direct interest means you are not independent. So one share, if you're a covered member, one share violates your independence. So it's completely black and white in that case, and that it's, you own one share, you're out. Indirect financial interests. Covered members may own, I should say financial interest up here. Members may own an indirect financial interest if they are immaterial. Common examples. Okay. Standard & Poor's 500 mutual stock fund. So for instance, you have this mutual stock fund, a Standard & Poor's 500, say take the top 500 companies and they buy stock in those 500 companies. So that's but it's a mutual fund. You buy into the mutual fund. The mutual fund invests in the Standard & Poor's 500, okay, the 500 largest companies. And suppose IBM is one of those companies. So you're auditing IBM, you have the Standard & Poor's 500 fund that invests in the 500 biggest companies. IBM is one of them. So IBM is in that Standard & Poor's 500 fund. Now you got to remember the top 500 companies. So in that fund, there's 499 other companies in it. So you're talking about something that's probably a fairly small portion of, you know, the thing. So if it was IBM, say including IBM. Another one. Investment in Bank One. So you invest in Bank One. Bank One loans money to IBM. Notice it's indirect. You're not actually loaning money to IBM. Bank One is, but you're investing in Bank One. So you invest in Bank One. So these are indirect financial interests. And as long as they're not material, you know, it'd be hard to imagine that Bank One, the loan amount to IBM would be, you know, material enough that it would make or break IBM. So, you know, these are kind of, you know, indirect. You're investing in some form, either a mutual fund or another bank or a bank. And then the bank is actually making the direct financial interest in the client, but it's indirect for the whoever's making the investment. Okay. So let's go through some cases here. Gina is a member of the audit engagement for IBM. She owns 5 shares of IBM stock. This ownership is immaterial to Gina. Okay, is Gina a covered member? Oh, come on.
Yes.
Yeah, she's on the engagement team, so Gina is a covered member. Does she have a direct interest?
Also, yes.
Yeah, she owns IBM stock. Yeah, it's a direct interest in the company. And this ownership is, oh, this ownership is immaterial to Gina, so I guess we don't have to ask you that one. It's just immaterial. Is Gina in violation of the independence rules? It's a direct interest.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't have any direct interest. So, yeah, so Gina would be in violation of the independence rules. Greg is a member of the audit engagement for IBM. He has investment in Standard Poor's 500 mutual fund. Because IBM is in the mutual fund has a direct interest in IBM. Okay, is Greg a covered member?
Yes.
Yep. Let's change it to yellow. Is the interest direct or indirect?
Indirect.
Indirect, right? Yeah. So Greg is investing in the Standard Poor's 500 fund. The Standard Poor's 500 fund is actually buying the stock. Is it material or immaterial?
Immaterial.
Immaterial. 1 of 500. You know. Is Greg in violation?
Yes.
Actually, no.
Hmm.
And here's why. It's indirect. And as long as it's immaterial, so it's indirect, and as long as it is, let me underline it.
Is it assumed immaterial because they didn't tell us it's material?
Actually, no, because it's going to be because there's 499 other shares of stock in there. Yeah, it'd be, you know, they usually do those funds based on market share. Sometimes they do it as a direct investment of equal shares, but it would be hard to imagine it being more than a percent or two of the total investment. And, you know, as a percent or two of the total investment, it probably isn't, you know, it's not going to change you overall that much. It's going to be a fairly small amount, but yeah. So things like funds that are indirect ones that are immaterial. Generally speaking, if it's a small portion of that fund is invested in, I think there's another one coming up that maybe, hopefully I put it in, I can't remember, to be honest with you. It'll come up in a minute here. Let me check and make sure. Yes, it'll come up in a minute. An indirect one that would be material. Okay, let's go to number 3. Helen is not a member of the audit engagement for IBM. However, she is a senior auditor in the engagement office. She owns 500 shares of IBM stock. This investment is material to Helen. Okay. Is Helen a covered member?
No.
No, not a covered member. Does she have a direct interest?
Yes.
Yes. And it says right here that it's material to her. Is Helen in violation of the independence rules?
Would
Anyone?
that be yes?
Actually, no. The independence rules don't affect her because she's not a covered member. So it's sort of like this. Let me go back up to the way up to the top. What does it say? She's a senior. She's a senior auditor in the engagement office. She's not on the so it's sort of like, you know, she's let's say she's over here. This is Helen. Doesn't look like Helen. Okay, so let's say this is her. She is not a covered member. The independence rules do not apply to her. She can't be in violation of them. They don't apply to her at all. She's not a covered member. So I know you look at this and you say, well, wait a minute. She's in the office. You know, she's in the engagement office, and she has 500 shares of IBM stock. She's not a covered member. She has no influence over the audit. She's not considered to be anyone who can influence it. So she's not in violation of it, and not being a covered member, she can't be in violation of it. It doesn't apply to her. Okay. We'll do independence for family members. No, we'll call it a 9, I think. All right. Immediate family members. Spouses. Oops. Yeah, what am I doing here? Spousal equivalents. Spousal equivalents could be, you know, boyfriends, girlfriends. It could be if they have for instance, a gay marriage or a gay contract, whatever they call it. I forget what it's called. But anyway, anyone who's basically a spouse. How do you spell equivalence? Okay, will be considered a family member. And dependent children. Are considered immediate family members. So this is the group. Okay, basically, immediate family members are those people that you see when you go home, right? I mean, whoever's in that house when you go home, that's basically going to be your immediate family members. So it's spouses, spousal equivalents, dependent children. So anyone who's a dependent, if it's not a dependent child, then it's not considered an immediate family member. This is to close up a loophole. I know I am not going to hold the IBM stock myself. I'm going to give it to my kid. Ha ha ha, there we go. I won't, I'm not in violation of the rules because I'm not actually owning it. If immediate family members are considered the same as covered members. So the covered member themselves is also included in their immediate family members. So if any of your immediate family members, their financial interest and all that kind of stuff, they must follow the same rules as whoever the actual covered member is, because they're linked to that covered member. So your spouses, your dependent children, those they cannot have. They have to follow the same rules basically as a covered member. Okay. Sharon is a member of the audit engagement for IBM. She does not own any shares of IBM stock, but her husband owns 10,000 shares of IBM stock. Okay, so she's a member of the audit engagement team. Is she a covered member? Yes. All right, anyone on the engagement team is a covered member. Is the investment direct or indirect?
Indirect.
It's actually direct. The husband is considered immediate family member. And the 10,000 probably material unless they're very, very wealthy, but even if it wasn't, it wouldn't matter. Because materiality doesn't come into play. Is she in violation of the independence rules? Yes. Her husband is an immediate family member. He is considered the same as Sharon. So Sharon's husband and her are considered one and the same. It's as if she's owning 10,000 shares of IBM stock. And again, she can't own one share. So it does, whether it's material doesn't really matter. This is a direct, it's a direct interest in it. Any immediate family member that has a direct interest, it's a direct interest for the covered member. And so Sharon is in violation of the independence rules. Steve is a member of the audit engagement for IBM. He does not own any shares of the stock, but his dependent daughter owns an immaterial amount of IBM stock. Okay, Steve, a covered member? Yep, audit engagement team, so Steve's a covered member. The interest, is it direct or indirect?
Direct.
Direct. Is it material or immaterial? I say it's immaterial, but does that really matter? Is Steve in violation of the independence rules? How much direct?
that-
I'm
Would he
sorry.
know? No.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
well, remember his daughter is the same as he. So if his daughter owns it, it's the same as Steve owning it.
So what makes it? So I thought it was if it was immaterial, it wasn't direct then, or am I right?
No, for the indirect financial interest. So this would be like if you invest in, like in these examples, Standard and Poor's 500 fund or investment in a bank.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
But you're the family members, and this is where it gets a little tricky. It seems kind of odd. You say, okay, well, it must be indirect, right? Because it's not him owning, it's his kid. His kid and him are the one and the same. His spouse and him are one and the same. Any spousal equivalent, boyfriend, girlfriend are one and the same. They're all considered the same. So any interest in it is considered, any direct interest in it is a no-no. One, if your child owns your 6-month-old child owns one share of stock in IBM, you're not independent. Okay, oops, where am I at? Okay. Jolene is a member of the audit engagement team for IBM. She's not owning any shares in IBM, but her husband has a large investment in a technology fund. 40% of the technology fund's holding are in IBM. Okay, Jolene, covered member. Is the interest direct or indirect? Technology fund. Is that direct or indirect?
Indirect?
Yeah, it's indirect. So he's got this indirect interest in a technology fund. It's a large investment. And 40% of the technology fund's holdings are in IBM stock. So a large investment and 40% of that investment is in IBM. Is that most likely material or immaterial?
Material.
Yeah. And notice that, whatever IBM does, if it's 40% of that fund, it probably moves it quite a bit. So while this is indirect, it's in a technology fund. Where's my it's indirect. So her husband isn't making a direct purchase of IBM stock, but this technology fund, 40%, for whatever reason, 40% of it is locked up in IBM stock. If it's a large investment, it's probably material. And which mean valuation independence rules. Yeah. Because it's indirect. And the only way that you could get away with it is if it's immaterial, but if it's material, it doesn't count. I shouldn't say that it doesn't count. I should say then you're not independent. Bad choice of words. Okay. Yeah, let's do these last ones. And then we'll be done with the financial interest. Okay. What time is it? Nah, let's not. Let's stop here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the audit sampling, like the classical sampling earlier. Is that I missed? I caught the fact that you said it, but that's all I.
Oh, right. I'm gonna push that off till next week.
Okay.
So we're working on some more next week. There's actually 3 parts to the sampling stuff. It's gonna be classical sampling, probably the proportional size, which we'll get to later. And then there's also an overview and so anyway, the sampling exam's not gonna be for a while. So I think we'll push that off just to get kind of started on chapter 3. And I'm gonna send out the chapter 1 and 2 exam. And by the way, I was thinking maybe if we finished up the sampling one that I'd have you turn that in, but I think I'm gonna have you do some of that on your own. And so I'd rather have you work on the test than working on the sampling. So anyway, so we'll put that off till next week. All right, so I'm gonna send out the exam. I should get it out. It probably will come out tonight, but it certainly by tomorrow. So let me get rid of this classical sampling. Excuse me. And I will send that out. Send your email by Wednesday, and I'm gonna be doing it right now, so hopefully it'll come out before Wednesday. And next week we'll continue with the chapter 3 handout, and also we'll go ahead and see if we can finish up the classical sampling. There's really not too much left to it, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, any questions? So here's what it's going to be due, and let me make sure that I have it in there. Nope, not there. Assignments due. That's the sample. I'm going to change this to all right, so the chapter 1 and 2 handout, which we just finished, that's due by next Friday, and then the chapter 1 and 2 exam will be due, and I'll send that out. You guys cannot see what I'm doing. I'm an idiot. Hold on. I apologize. Bad ventriloquist act. Okay, so assignment and due dates. Oops. So the chapter 1 and 2 handout, which we just finished, and then chapter 1 and 2 exam, which will be sent out either tonight or tomorrow. I'll try to get it out tonight. And that will be due on Friday, next Friday, the 11th. And again, if you come in next class, that you can talk about it if you want, if you have any questions on it. Any questions on that? Okay, well, go and enjoy the snow, I guess. Hopefully we won't get clobbered like they say we are, but try to stay safe. And I will see you guys in a week's time. If you have any questions too, you can always email me. If you have any questions on the exam or anything like that, feel free to email me. I don't mind answering them. Any questions? Okay. Well, have a good evening, and I will send out the exam to your email shortly.
Have a good night, Professor.
I will.
Thanks, Professor. Have a good night.
Good night.